I remember a client. She was so diligent. She'd spent 4 months, maybe more, building out her full business operations, Notion workspace, SOPs, for every process she could map. Generally impressive, super thorough, logical, clearly thought through. And then her youngest got sick for a whole week. Not seriously, just kid sick. You know, it's like the kind of sick where they have to be home, they can't be at school, and they need you. And when she came back to her business, back to her system, she was like, it feels like trying to get back into a house where someone changed the locks while you were gone. Everything was still there, pretty much exactly as she'd left it. Nothing had moved because the way she'd designed it wasn't for the week she'd just had. So it had no way to accommodate it. And now she's behind on everything the system told her she should have done. And so now she feels like she's falling behind in her very own business that she built it herself. She'd basically built herself a box that she'd then become stuck in. And she talked about it like a really functional cage. And we probably couldn't name it too much better than that. Carolyn Crowder-Perez wrote a book called Invisible Woman. I think I've talked about it a little bit before. And her central argument is one I think all of us need to understand before we go anywhere near systems or structures or calendars for us as women. Her thesis is that the modern world was designed for a default human. And the default human is male. Car crash test dummies calibrated to male bodies, office temperatures set to male metabolic rates, medical research conducted almost exclusively on male subjects, the 9-to-5 working day built for someone whose domestic life was handled by somebody else, the assumption that when a person sits down to work, they arrive unencumbered, no school run, no sick kid in the room next door, no appointment to remember, no emotional weight. From the morning, that often doesn't go very well. And when you design for that default human and you aren't it, you become invisible in the design. And the consequences, as Perez documents, range from inconvenient to genuinely dangerous. Scarlett and I had this conversation on the bike the other day. She's like, did you know, Mum, that seatbelts weren't built for women? Which is one of the dangerous bits that she talks about. I was like, yes, darling, we are definitely in a world built for men. But here's something I really want you to hear. Because this is where it stops being about the world and it starts being about the business you built yourself. The most painful version of this one is not the world designing women out. The most painful version is women designing themselves out of their own world. We've become so practiced at contorting ourselves to fit into structures that weren't built for us. The 9-to-5, the assumption of uninterrupted focus time, the business advice that never accounted for a sick week or a school concert, or a body that operates in cycles rather than flat lines. That you've stopped registering just how much this costs. And we just absorbed it. And then when you finally get around to building something of your own, you built it from the same inherited blueprints, the ones that left us out in the first place. So we built this business. You put your clients in the blueprint. You put your employees, your contractors in that blueprint. You put your revenue targets in the blueprint and your content calendar. And you quietly, without even quite deciding to, left yourself out. That is a design habit so deeply ingrained that we don't even know we're doing it. That business was built to accommodate everyone else. And somewhere in that architecture, the woman running it, the cupboard under the stairs. And that's the question I ask clients that tends to land harder than almost anything else in this work. Where are you living in everything you've built for everyone else? Not metaphorically, actually practically. Is there room in your week for a Tuesday afternoon that goes sideways? Is there room in your structure for a season where your energy is lower? Hello, perimenopause, or just the week before you bleed. Is there room in your calendar for the fact that you're not a consistent resource? Is there room in your calendar and in the business's calendar for the fact that you're not a consistent resource? That your capacity in February might be really different from your capacity in October? That the week your kid is sick is a real week and not an aberration that you should be apologizing for? And if the honest answer is no, and for most women I work with, the honest answer is no, then you've built a business from the blueprint that left you out. You've replicated inside the thing you made with your own hands the same structural exclusion that has been costing women in every domain for decades. I actually get kind of angry when I think about it. I'm like, God damn it, we did it to ourselves. So this is where breathable structure comes in. This is what breathable structure corrects. This isn't about your calendar, although it's part of it, and it's not about the blueprint, it's not about the systems and the SOPs. Breathable structure is an architectural decision. It is the decision to design the business, its rhythms, its capacity model, its decision-making frameworks around a woman who is a whole, not around a woman who is always available, not around a woman who has successfully edited her humanity out in the service of her professionalism, around a woman who is a mother, a body with seasonal variation and maturity variation, a person with limits and desires and a life that matters outside of sales and wages and profit. There's three things that make this structure breathable. First, it's designed around your actual capacity, not theoretical capacity. Your theoretical capacity is what you could do in a perfect week. I have yet to have one. I don't think I've ever had a perfect week, ever. Your actual capacity is what you can do in a week that includes a sick kid, a difficult client, something unexpected, because that's almost guaranteed, because unexpected actually should be expected. And the fact that you didn't sleep well on Wednesday because you were running figures at your head at 3 a.m. after the thunderstorm woke you up. That was me this week. Most systems are built for the theoretical capacity and break on the first contact with actual capacity. So design for the actual, build the buffer in as a feature, not as a concession. Because all of those things are far more likely to happen than not. Second, it has explicit override conditions. What are the specific circumstances in which this structure bends rather than breaks? Sick kid, what's the protocol? Low energy season, what do I take off my plate and what absolutely stays? Big delivery period in the business, what are we adjusting elsewhere? If the structure in your business doesn't have permission to flex already built into it, you're going to feel like you're breaking it every time life happens. The flex needs to be part of the design, not a failure of it. Third, you must be placed on the capacity map. Most business owners do a capacity analysis that accounts for your team bandwidth, their leave, their time off, your client load, what they need from you, and the operational demand. But almost none of you include yourself, your energy, your recovery needs, your seasonal variation as a variable in the model. Breathable structure requires that we put ourselves on that map with the same rigor and specificity that as any other resource, not as a nice to have. I mean, your business is a reflection of you, but as a structural requirement. Because if we build our business on our constant, unvarying, uncounted availability, it's not strong. It becomes super dependent. And when we have a dependent structure, it's one illness, one hard season, one properly complicated Thursday away from coming apart. And it feels like every second Thursday is properly complicated. So the question I ask every client when we're building their structure is this: if something real goes sideways this week, one proper thing, one unexpected thing, does this structure bend or does it break? Because if it breaks in its first real test, in its first real run at a week in your normal life, then we have not built breathable structure. We've just built the same design in which we were invisible in with slightly better wallpaper. So the question this week is, what's one thing you clarify with everyone you hire before they come on board? This actually comes down to that invisible woman structure. I've been running businesses for 20 years now, and like a lot of the women that I work with, I'm pretty passionate and probably a bit biased in my employment practices, so I tend to want to give women with children opportunities that they might not otherwise have got. And what I learned early on in this journey was that when you do that, your business doesn't just carry the costs of your sick kids and your sick family. It can also unintentionally end up carrying the costs of the sick kids and the sick family of all of the female primary parent employees that you have. Some of you aren't going to like this answer. I realized that without a doubt that all of the sick leave, unpaid leave, and holiday days of the primary parent, which is generally us ladies, would get used up and then some before it would ever be considered that the other parent might take a day off work to look after their sick kids. And for all that the system has built us out and has been built for a default human, I think we have to start holding higher standards in our own businesses and in our own lives if we want to systemically change it. One of the things that I require when I bring people on that I know have a family is that I say we have an expectation that children's sick leave is split evenly between both parents. If you're a single parent, I'm not talking about you because that's completely different. If you have a co-parenting relationship though, even if it's in two houses, I actually find often when children go from one house to the other, they split custody, on the assumption that it's done evenly and fairly. Actually, this cost sits more evenly in those households than it does where both the parents still live in the same house. This is going to be really controversial, but when I bring on women and men, but of course, because I've got this bias where I like to give women that are mothers opportunities, it's more often women than men that I'm having this conversation with, is that I want to let them know up front that we have an expectation that the carer's load in terms of sick leave, in terms of time off around school holidays, around teacher-only days, around strikes, and around kids' illnesses split evenly across both parenting parties. When I first say this, people have a reaction. You're probably having a reaction. That's totally cool. But hear me out here. If the businesses that employ women are paying a much higher cost of sick leave, unpaid leave than the alternative, a male, then of course we are forever going to be paid less and less asked after in the workplace. And we're choosing that ourselves. And so one of the things I expect is that mum and dad do a sick day each. So if the kids are homesick on Monday and mum's home on Monday, I expect that dad will be home on Tuesday. Why? Because he gets paid sick leave too. And he's allowed to take sick leave too, just like you are for your kids. And the pushback I get is, oh, kids need their mums when they're sick. That's just not actually true. There's a whole lot of studies that say that he's just as capable of nurturing and the kids are just as connected to him in terms of nurturing. Once they're past those early stages where you're the primary source of food, often, it's one of those robbing him things from the last episode. And so that's an expectation I set with everyone that comes in, because I think unless we lead the way as female business owners, asking women to ask their partners to step up and their partner's employer to step up and pay their fair share of that cost, then we will always be stuck with this problem. It will always be the woman taking the sick leave for the kids' days off and the holiday days off. And if you employ more women than men because you're trying to give these women an opportunity, it's going to be more expensive for you than it is for someone who employs a whole lot of blokes, which is ridiculous. So that structurally is wrong. One of the expectations that I set up front with anyone coming on, if they have a family, is that the load needs to be shared evenly at home if you're going to come work for us, because we don't accept that if you're in a two-parent household, that one parent and that one parent's employer should bear all the costs of the sick kids. And that is because I believe she deserves better. I believe our businesses deserve better. And I believe structurally, if we start to have those conversations in our businesses where we employ women, and then they go and have those with their partners who then, they won't even need to have a conversation with their employer. Their employer expects them to use their sick day as it's designated for them or for people that they are supposed to care for. They don't even have to apologize for it or excuse for it. They just need to let their employer know when their kids are sick and take a day. It's totally acceptable. It's acceptable for her, acceptable for him. If we want to stop being invisible, if we want to stop living in a world that's designed for default human, and this isn't just for us, this is for our children that come behind us. This is about helping everyone to rise. This is about creating a structure that supports both parties. I think we have to make those changes. For me, the one conversation I have when people come on board is, here's how we fairly and evenly ask you to distribute the load at home. And there's going to be exceptions to that rule. Nothing's hard and fast in my world. Everything comes with nuance. And I think just starting to have those conversations starts to shift things in the way that the business world operates and the way that we run our businesses. Because what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up covering their shifts when their kids are sick and not having the same space to be there when your kids are sick. And we're not building businesses like that here. So one thing this week, no audits, no reviews. I just want you to ask yourself that question. Where do you live in everything you've built for everyone else? And find one place in your week, one real place where the structure currently has no room for you, where it assumes your theoretical self, your theoretical capacity, rather than your actual one. And see if you can name it. And see if you can name what it would need to look like to give you some room in it. A real one with your dimensions. Next episode, we're talking seasons. Not launch seasons, not content seasons, the actual biological, relational, and business seasons of a life like yours, and why trying to operate at the same output across all of them is not strength. It is yet another design flaw, and it has a compounding cost. Till next time, stay moxie.